My presentations are a big story, with lots of little stories. And you will join the stories that mean something to you. I hope you enjoy. Towards the pluriverse, together. Non-violent emancipation for joyful futures. For me, it's always futures, because I'm a pluralist. Do I point this somewhere to get the change? Okay. Of course, this is a long journey for us all. Sustainability. Donna Haraway puts a hyphen between sustain and ability, because we need certain abilities to sustain. My journey, I started as an environmental scientist and plant ecologist. Back in the 80s, I had my own ecological landscape design company. I've done a lot of things since then, as you can see. I was in the photographic industry for a time, between the transition from analog to digital, and it taught me a lot about how societies can change very quickly. But I spent 25 years, thereabouts, in design, and I've always had to put new adjectives in front of the word design. You'll see many adjectives there. Eco-design, slow design, co-design, design activism. I keep adding these adjectives because our world keeps changing and the challenges of our world keep changing. And now I talk about post-normal design. We'll come on to this idea of what is normal in a minute. My talk is in 4 sections. I just should check when I have a timer in front, okay. The longue durée. This is to look at 5 centuries of what we've been doing, because those 5 centuries are still in the present. My second section is about neo-imperialism and neo-extractivism. The third section, from a global north universe to a pluriverse. And the fourth, I will come back to this theme of non-violent emancipation for joyful futures. The longue durée, remembering the Capitalocene. Can I just do a check? Who of you know this word Capitalocene? Okay. Who knows the word Anthropocene? A few. Good. We start here. Sometimes the world turns in a new direction in a very short space of time. It started in Spain, for me, anyway. 1492, a huge year of change. It was the year when the Catholic monarchs, Catherine and Ferdinand, conquered Granada, and so centuries of Islamic rule finished. A new era began, and on the 31st of March, the Catholic monarchs did the Alhambra decree, an edict, expelling all the Jews unless they converted to Christianity. In April of that year, they signed a deal. That's the language Trump uses, isn't it? They signed a deal with Christopher Columbus. He went and discovered what we now call the Antilles in the Caribbean. But of course, he encountered indigenous people. He didn't discover it. Human beings were already there, creating their own culture, creating their own lives. I posit this as a big turning point. In the same year, almost, Albrecht Dürer, the wonderful German photorealist painter, painted these 2 pictures. Normally, he did portraits of rich people. Why did he paint the turf and a hare? Well, I have to guess, because we can't talk to him. But I think he painted these because they meant something to ordinary people. Most people at this time, 1503, had intimate contact with nature. Is there a direction I point this in to get it? Oh, press harder. So I'd like you to contemplate that we had what I call the Great Separation. Somewhere when we entered into the 16th century, from 1500 onwards, our fundamental relationships with nature here in Europe changed. We moved into a period in the agricultural revolutions of a European colonial agricultural revolution, better known as settler colonialism, where Europeans took indigenous land. The fourth British Revolution in agriculture was to enclose the land. The rich people took the common land and started mechanization. This created massive unemployment on agricultural land, but it created a new proletariat for the Industrial Revolution. And we're still presently in the fifth agricultural global revolution. This is of more mechanization, more industrialization, and more globalization. These stories are all connected, and some people, some geologists, call this the Anthropocene, because they said with this human activity, we started changing the geology. We started changing how geology would build up. There's still debate with the geologists. I don't like this term, Anthropocene, because it blames every human for where we are today. And I don't think that's true. I think some humans, especially Europeans with this history, have had a bigger impact on where we are today. So I prefer to use these terms, the Capitalocene. I will tell you what it is in a minute. The Plantationocene and the Necrocene. And these are not geological. They are debates in the humanities about what kind of time we're living in. The Capitalocene was created by a geographer and philosopher, sociologist, Jason Moore. He said it's a multi-species assemblage, a world ecology of capital, power, and nature. If you read his piece, he simply says, this period of the Capitalocene needs cheap nature and cheap labor. And if we reflect on that, much of our global economy still has that philosophy. The Plantationocene, this is a definition by a group of anthropologists and social scientists, is talking about the creation of plantations, and that this system was a new system of agriculture. As we know, there's a terrible history of slavery related to plantation. But we have new plantations. Imagine all those people trying to clean off the propaganda and the pornography off the internet. You think they're paid well? No. These are the new plantations. And of course, the agricultural plantations continue. And then Justin McBrien, I'm going to read out what he said, the Necrocene. Capital was born from extinction, and from capital, extinction has flowed. The Necrocene, the new death, reframes the history of capitalism's expansion through the process of becoming extinction. It's hard language, but we have to confront this. If we don't confront what we've been doing and what we're still doing, we won't get the futures we want. Of course, this system is based on a casta system, well known here in Spain, I think, and there's some paintings done to illustrate the casta system, because the casta system allows you to pay people different rates. It allows you to put them in different kinds of social reproduction. And of course, it's hard to contemplate that this was a very rigid system, also in collaboration with the church and religious forces. It hasn't changed much. The slide on the left is how people in 1911 saw capitalism. The slide in the middle is 2011, how people see capitalism. It's a pyramid. And the slide on the right has added a new word here, neo-colonialism. So maybe things haven't changed too much. This is what soybean production looks like in Brazil. These kind of quantities of seeds and the distribution systems they need to transport them all over the world are not sustainable. They are not, simply, if we just look at the energy equation. This is one of the biggest holes in Europe, and it's here in Spain. It's Rio Tinto Zinc, a big mining company. They have other big holes all over the world, because this kind of way of thinking about capital means we have to extract huge quantities of materials. Of course, the consequence is climate change, and you'll see this data from 40 years. Anywhere that's red is really warming very, very fast indeed. I'm in the northwest of Portugal, and we've had tremendous storms the last 2 weeks. Our neighbors of 80 years old tell us they're more intense than they used to be. So we know all this stuff. I also note Mallorca is getting a little bit hotter. I don't know whether you'd agree. Agree? Disagree? Not sure. That's also an answer. I move on to the second section, and I'm going to speed up a little bit. Neo-imperialism is neo-extractivism. I went to an amazing exhibition by Kate Crawford and Vladan Jola in MAT in Lisbon. The exhibition is called Fluxes. And this particular exhibition is called Calculating Empires, a genealogy of technology and power since 1500. I was delighted. Here's some other people saying, we have to talk about 500 years. And they do it diagrammatically. And it's most amazing work, and I sincerely hope they produce a book. And they talk about this, at the bottom is 1500, at the top is 2025. They talk about how we use information, how we use power, how we use technology over 500 years. It's an amazing, amazing piece of work. Maybe you get them here, David. It's really incredible. And they talk about, of course, neocolonialism and the rise of neoliberalism. And Kate Crawford did a book earlier called The Atlas of AI. It's worth a read by anybody because it shows how much power AI uses. It shows how much natural resources AI needs to work. So every time we do a Google search, and we do, and I do as well, it has consequences. And she simply says, AI is the emerging extractive industry of the 21st century. It is neither artificial or intelligent. It's a grand infrastructure project and a registry of power. This is the Tesla Gigafactory in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if you read this week, but Elon Musk is stopping the production of 2 models of Tesla cars, and he's moving into robotics and AI. I say, God help us, okay? Because this is not a system for everybody. This is a system for people with money. We can't move around the world. I say we, I mean us. We're all not going to have a Tesla. And beware the extractivists. They come with an ideology too. It's not for us. I say us. And of course, we have another problem that not everybody lives in a democratic state. This is a wonderful database. It's open source. It's by an organization called VDEM. They're in a political science department in the University of Gothenburg. And they document democracies. Which way are they going? More autocratic or more democratic? So the red ones are autocracies. The orange ones are electoral autocracies. The light blue is electoral democracy, and the dark blue is liberal democracy. And when I saw the United States is dark blue, I said, what? But I looked at their latest report, 2025. They are contemplating dropping the United States down a grade. Let's hope it doesn't go to orange. I move on to my next section. From a global north universe to a pluriverse. This is a beautiful word. We talk about universal human values. And of course, there are values we share as humans. But as we move around the world, maybe they mutate a little bit. And maybe they're more pluriversal values. This is the philosopher who created the concept of the pluriverse, William James, 1907. Also is a psychologist, and he set the strand of philosophical pragmatism running. He says the pluriverse is defined as a world of worlds. A world of worlds. If you remember nothing from this talk, please remember this phrase, a world of worlds. There are many worlds. And this is pluralism for James, involved the affirmation of difference and relation. I'm not going to spend more time. I'll give the slides to David, and you can find a place to put the talk, I hope. There's a beautiful book here, too, inspired by the Zapatistas in Mexico, which is a region where they want more autonomy. This is a very strong autochthonous, indigenous group. And this is a dictionary, pluriverse, a post-development dictionary. Many worlds are walked in the world. Many worlds are made. Many worlds make us. And I'd like to emphasize that. We are made by our worlds as well as making them. I would say that the world of settled colonialism was a world of death-making. I want a world of life-making. In these pluriversal worlds, we have to use different forms of knowledge. You're familiar with these three kinds of knowledge: theoretical knowledge, procedural knowledge, or practical knowledge, and relational knowledge, which is embodied, embrained. This comes together in what we call encultured knowledge. Here in Mallorca, you also have a very specific language of your own too. There are other things which are encultured. And tacit knowledge. We touch the world. We forget. You're sitting on a chair. Your ass is touching the chair, right? So we live in a world which is tactile. We have a lot of knowledge through our bodies. But I think what's most important, and this is a term that Donna Haraway created, the STS specialist and feminist scholar, she talked about situated knowledge and situated knowing, because we can take those three forms of knowledge, but when we're here in Mallorca, or where I live in the Alto Minho in the north of Portugal, or where my family lives in England, we have different forms of situated knowledge. And we work with all these knowledges. That's what makes us plural. It also includes language. And I found this slide, and I think maybe David will recognize it from one of my previous talks. We have 7,000 languages in the world. This is a way of being. It's a way of acting. It's a way of seeing, a way of feeling. And we should protect them. And we should ask, how do these languages get together? We should also contemplate what kind of economy do we want. This is a diagram called the iceberg economy. It's inspired by the work of two feminist economists, Gibbs and Graham. They work together. And the real economy is the one you see above the water, that iceberg you see. What you don't see is the ice under the water supporting the economy. If we just look at some of these things, this is an unpaid economy largely. Without this unpaid economy, this is the laser here, good, elder care, housing cooperatives, soil nutrition, compost, barter, language, parenting, non-profit, hunting and gathering, collective ownership, imagination. Without this unpaid labor, we can't support the iceberg. There's another economic model I like too. It's called the donut economy. We have to make sure that people don't fall into the hole, because it means they're not living a socially good life. And we have to make sure they don't go outside the donut, because this is where we're destroying the very environment we live in. I have another way of looking at it. I call it regenerative design. We have to balance these three forms of diversity: agricultural diversity, human diversity, and natural biological diversity. We have those classic Venn circles. This is called the future cone. And with the future cone, futurologists use it, they talk about possible futures, probable futures, and the one I like, preferable futures. What futures do we prefer? We have to think about this, but it's a useful tool to think. Let's just take, for instance, anthro-diversity as our human diversity with biodiversity. And we know there's a big conversation happening here about rewilding, from multicultures to multi-ecologies, ecological rewilding, and anthropocentric rewilding. Anthropocentric rewilding means that we are present in that ecosystem. Ecological rewilding means that you put a fence and humans are not allowed in. That's also quite a nice concept. Should we ban ourselves from certain places? I think the answer is yes. Because if we don't, we face more of the necrocene, more extinction, more damaging to our ecosystems. And again, we can look at agrodiversity. In Portugal, in 1956, I have a catalog, an agricultural catalog. They had hundreds of varieties of vegetables and fruit. They joined the EU in 1986, and the EU subsidizes the production of certain crops. And we lose the diversity. It's that simple. In the valley I live in Portugal, we still have that diversity because they're small farms. These farms are about subsistence, and they know which varieties grow best in their valley. And this is a map of abandoned farmland. It's done by two Portuguese researchers in an institute in Germany. And where the darker green is, there is more abandoned agricultural land. Behind my house, there's a forest. But if you look closely, it has terraces. The oak trees are 30 years old. It was abandoned 30 years ago. The local inhabitants are a bit sad because they remember when they all used to farm going up the mountain. What they forget is how much hard work it was, and how much suffering there was, and how much hunger there was. So we can't be nostalgic, but we really do have to think, how do we share the world with other species? And now I've depressed you all. Well, a little bit. I hope you also see that there's potential for doing things differently. I come into the last section with some inspiring case studies, I hope. Nonviolent emancipation for joyful futures. A little bit more philosophy, because we have to understand what is nonviolence. Judith Butler, a scholar, a feminist scholar, and a beautiful thinker, wrote a book called Gender Trouble. And she, in writing this book, she talked what is a normative violence. A normative violence is when we insist there is only one way of being, or two ways of being, let's say, male and female. There's no other way of being, okay? None at all. That's a normative violence, because it's not recognizing that we are incredibly diverse as a humanity. And she said something else. Norms are performed collectively. We as societies also create these norms because we all agreed to do something. You've all agreed to sit in nice, neat rows, okay? I've agreed to stand up here. This is a norm. Well, it's a useful norm too, because she also says that. Some norms are good norms. They help us to understand things. But she says a lot of norms are what she calls a petrified ontology. Ontology is simply our way of being. When it's petrified, it means it's solidified. Imagine you're a rock. You can't move. That's who you are. You stay that way. And what she suggested then, if we take this normative violence, we have to have something which challenges it. She called it non-violence. And she said we have to practice it. So to practice non-violence is an everyday practice. I hope I can show you what that means in reality. And she said we have to move away from individualism to what she said called the interrelational individual. How we make relations and the diversity of relations we have changes us and changes those people and living things and places we have relationships with. So it's two-way. And she talks about human and beyond human relations. Our arrogance as a species, Anthropocene. We didn't call it the Biocene, because that's all life. And in practicing this nonviolence, we create what's called a counter-realism. Or, I would say more simply, we create counter-stories. Other stories that maybe people can enjoy and be part of. I'm just going to show a few examples quickly in the last... It's 15 minutes I have, is that correct? Yeah, okay. This was the theme of the Biennale I created in Porto, Alter Realities, Designing the Present. How can we make and prototype together? Reveal, critique, and amplify alter realities in order to reorientate ourselves towards futures where trust in each other is restored, where regeneration, not destruction, is evident, and where we find a new relationality between us and others. This was the general theme. And I was very pleased today, I'm sorry I missed the name of the gentleman here, he talked about what's most important, to have critical thinking. Yes, and with critical doing. because the thinking is not enough. So we did lots of things in the Biennale, as you can imagine. We had some conferences, they're still online, colloquia. We were in COVID times too, so we could only have 20 people to a live event. It was quite surreal. And we created a book from these colloquia. It's called Post-Normal Design. In actually naming post-normal design, we raised the question, well, what is normal design? And what is normal design doing to us? So this is not an answer, post-normal design. It's a bit of critical thinking. And in that book, that little book, it's a beautiful book, we have a contribution from Arturo Escobar. He's a Colombian anthropologist. And he's, in the last 5 or 6 years, he's been writing more and more about design. And he wrote a piece in this book called Against Terricide. Of course, we use this terrible word genocide when we talk about the obliteration of parts of humanity. But we don't talk about the obliteration of parts of our living biological world, and we should. Well, here's the word, terricide, or ecocide if you prefer. Doesn't matter, but we have to acknowledge that our activities cause ecocide, cause terricide. And he said, well, okay, this is how we define terricide as the killing of tangible ecosystems and the spiritual ecosystem, that's important, and that of the pueblos, peoples, and of all forms of life. And he saw 6, although I only see 5 here. So let's say 5 axes of design-orientated socio-ecological transitions. Social and ecological. We have to do this transition at the same time. It's not enough to just do a social transition. There has to be an ecological one. It's not enough to do an ecological one. We have to have a social one. Recommunalization of social life. Relocalization of social, productive, and cultural activities. Strengthening of autonomies. Depatriarchalization, deracialization, and decolonization of social relations. There is so much we can learn from the peoples in countries that became post-colonial, and now one could argue many of them are decolonial. They're trying to go back in the past and bring it forward into the present to find out what they can be from parts of their past which were buried. And the last one, re-earthing life, and I'll show some examples. We had a journal during the Biennale too. This is a project called Alta Livelihoods by Brave New Alps in the Alps in the northeast of Italy. And they went to this small valley in the Alps, and they got the community together, and they said, let's talk about our possible futures. What can our futures be? And here they started talking about, for instance, food sovereignty centers, a people's supermarket, radical composting, access to common lands, self-provisioning, tables of good governance, community bakeries, etc., etc., etc. This is how they saw their valley could be in 2060. Well, I would say to them, think about it earlier. 2060 is too late. Bring it forward a bit. But it's beautiful. You can go to any community, as I've done lots of different communities, and create a vision. Where do we want to go? Okay, the global economy is doing this, the global economy is going over there, the financial markets are moving there. What do we want to do? And what do we want to do together? Also, we talked about alter care. It focuses on care not only as a matter of human life, but all life. This was from a Brazilian collective that did this particular issue. And this is something else we can all ask ourselves. What are our relations, each one of you, myself included, what are our relations with other living things? How can we improve them for us both? We had a museum of vibrant matter. It was my main exhibition there. And this is still online, the archive of vibrant matter. And we asked local people to bring along materials. We also collected some materials from the Porto metropolitan area. And during the exhibition, more materials will be added by local people. It was amazing because we had some new categories. How do we describe materials? We had hyperlocal materials. This is a particular grass where they make the cloaks for the pastors on the mountains in Portugal. And this grass only grows, and this particular wheat only grows in certain parts of the country, so it's hyperlocal. We have other local materials, like this is composting from municipal waste. We have what we call immigrant materials. They're coming from another country to your country. We have emigrant materials. They're leaving your country and going to another country. We have transient materials that only spend a very short time in the locality before they move on. And we have this category which is interesting, omnipresent materials. We all have mobile phones. They're all over the world. They use something like 20 minerals from the atomic table. They're complex products. And we also have microplastics. They're all over the world. They're omnipresent. I did a workshop with David, actually, in Ferrol, in Galicia, where we looked at seaweeds and the potential for making things from seaweed, because they have a coastline there which is full of seaweed. You can make new objects from the shells of mussels. And I think this is here on an island like Mallorca. You need to think, what do we have here? What is unique to here? And can we make things with it without damaging life? Or, even better, can we make things here and improve life? I did a lot of work with small farmers in South Tyrol. I produced a book from this, Design and Art-Based Practices. And we have many examples in this. I ran workshops on the farms. We would go out to the farmers. The website's still live. You can go and look at it. So we would go out to the farmers on their farms. They would provide the food. We would meet together, discuss. This is a food timeline. We asked the farmers to draw on a paper plate, what were you eating 200 years ago? What do you think people were eating 400 years ago? What are you eating today? And what do you think you'll eat in the future? Which is the same question as, what do you think you'll be growing in the future? The answers were fascinating, and I don't have time to go into it. But I think this idea of using local knowledge in this way, through workshops, we call this a boundary object because people can put their knowledge into the object, is a beautiful way of doing it. We looked at what are the natural dyes in the South Tyrol, and could we create a new economy there with the local wool? We looked at milk, but also the other end of the cow, the manure. Nobody was talking about this as an economic resource. We did, we ran a workshop. So to rethink in the biological cycles of agriculture, there should be no waste. It's amazing that in quite a lot of human languages, I mentioned 7,000, they don't have a word for waste. Many indigenous languages do not have a word for waste. That tells a lot about our language. Of course, we have to look at this through a multi-level perspective. Arguably, we are all down at this end at the micro, niche activities with multi-actors. And we try and influence the socio-technical regime and the socio-technical landscape. There's always the chance that something can change at a much wider scale. But we are usually micro-actors. But we have to join with alliances with many other people. Very quickly, these are projects where we can have recommunalization of social life. There's a project called Incredible Edible in the UK, where they started growing food on municipal land. The authorities said, no, you can't do that. But then they said, okay, you can. And anybody who was hungry could take food from the food grown on municipal land. This is about alternative food networks. This is the Italian network, Gruppi di Acquisito Solidale. But there are many ways of arranging alternative food networks. And in that book, Field Explorations, Chris Croy's shows you how they're organized. Because another part of wanting different futures is we have to organize differently. This is the new schools of the Zapatistas to teach about the autonomy, to teach about what knowledge we used to have in the past and bring it back into the future, to regenerate it, to reinvigorate it. This is a project by the artist Angelica Das, Brazilian artist, where she takes portraits of people with a Pantone background, Pantone color background, of the exact color of their skin. Well, it's a very interesting project, and I think this is beautiful. I always smile when I see this image because it reminds us of how diverse we are. Of course, Pantone doesn't have enough colors for humanity. That's clear too. But I'm very nearly at the end. Re-earthing life, we have to come together in the commons again. We have to make things in common. If we make things in common, we are remaking ourselves. David Bollier is one of the key people that led the debate, peer-to-peer, open source, all that kind of stuff. And lastly, this is our little project in the valley I live. It's called Carreiros para Futuros Ancestrais. Micro-democratic actions through artistic and cultural practices in a small menial valley. You can go and look at the website. What's important throughout the cultural activities, we have theater, we have dance, we have cinema, open-air cinema. The first time in our tiny little village of 20 people, they had an open-air cinema. But we come together in assemblies with the local people. And in these assemblies, something is growing. Gradually, we are talking about our futures. This is amazing because nobody ever asks these people anything about what future they want. So it's really important to get on the ground, to assemble together. And not only assemble, but to create a new assemblage. This is a philosophical term from Bruno Latour and Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari. Assemblages. It's components, parts coming together to make something. We need to bring together different professionals. I'm a transdisciplinary, polydisciplinary person. It's my nature, part of it, and I was trained as an environmental scientist where we had to do different disciplines. But also have people there that represent all the other living things. We need voices for them too. They are assemblages of care. They are polydisciplinary. They are careful. But they're also assemblies of joy. Because we have to have not just hope. The hope is in acting together. It's what I call hope in action. And so, let's reject anti-emancipation. Because that's the application of power to reduce difference. It's the application of power to eliminate plurality. I see emancipation, and you know I'm an advocate of a non-violent emancipation, is to embrace different plural ways of feeling, knowing, being, making, living, and dying. I want to thank you, and as I picked this slide, I thought, wow, I haven't used it for a while. I thought, well, okay, there's two worlds there. And what are they? The Arctic, with Greenland, and the Antarctic. And these are only two perspectives. Imagine moving around our world. If you view the world from China, you hardly see any sea. If you view the world from Cape Verde, you're surrounded by sea. To me, this is a joy, to see our world every day from a different angle. And I leave it there, I think. We've got a wonderful conference ahead of us, and I'm sure we're going to have some beautiful conversations. Thank you, and I hope I haven't overstepped my time too much.